Rich people have kids, poor people have kids. It's a middle class that stops having kids when things get tough because they're trying to elevate themselves. They're trying to move up on classes. And the more kids they have, that the harder that becomes until they break through into the upper class or they go back down to the lower class because they don't care. And so they're all terrified of going down to lower class by having more kids, so they just don't have any. And the big part of that is things like cost of schooling, cost of food, cost of medical care, and cost of housing. Now, Donald Trump says, okay, I see this as a problem and I would like a solution. So he says, I am going to introduce 50-year mortgages. And 50-year mortgages are going to solve this problem because the cost of each payment will go down. It'll be cheaper for you to have each individual payment if you're paying it over 50 years. And that's true to an extent, but there are a lot of problems with that formulation. One, you're paying interest over time on that. So yes, technically your payment is lower, but you're paying interest for longer. And since the interest accrues over time, you are overall paying more for the house, not less. The other huge problem is this puts you in long-term financial slavery. 50 years, let's say you buy a home in your 30s. Like you make it to 25, you start saving up enough money for down payment, you buy a home at 30. 50 years means you will have paid off your home when you're 80. The average life expectancy in the United States is what, 77, 76, going down sadly because of things like this. So the average person would not live through paying off their mortgage. If they got a mortgage at 30 and they had a 50-year mortgage, they die before they paid it off. They literally will die in debt slavery. They will never own their own home. That means that they are peasants. This is basically feudalism without any of the benefits. Like at least a feudal lord, you may have had to he owned the land that you lived on, and you had to kick up something to him all the time. But at least he, protected you from Vikings. Like at least there was some kind of reciprocal relationship. There's a noblesse oblige to you. And now we're talking about, oh no, you'll never own anything. And you don't even get any of the benefits of having, the protection of a medieval lord at the end of the day. And in fact, they're going to import the Vikings and tell you you're a bad person for not loving that the Vikings are taking over your town, taking over your politics, right? So this did not go over well, right? Like Trump even put out like this kind of stuff where, the 30-year mortgage from Roosevelt and then the 50-year mortgage from Trump. No, that's not a good thing, Trump. Like you don't want to brag about that. Like this is just the most boomer mentality possible, right? You're not addressing the underlying issue. Let's just leverage people more. That's the solution. More debt, more subsidy, longer duration of loans, right? I remember when mortgages were 20 years on average. Now they're 30, and now we're talking about 50. Same thing happened with car loans. Used to be you had a car loan for 2, maybe 3 years. Then it became 5. Now it's 7 in some cases or more. We're extending these, not just the amount of credit, but the periods over which we extend that credit in the hopes of trapping people in debt longer, making them a slave to usury, and making sure that they can never live on their own. And we're not addressing any of the underlying issues because there's a huge problem here. If you give everyone a 50-year mortgage, guess what? There'll be more people with 50-year mortgages trying to buy a home simultaneously. Guess what that'll do to the price of houses? They'll go up. They'll skyrocket. You're inflating artificially the cost of houses by creating this type of mortgage. In fact, mortgages already do that. The way that we offer home loans already increases the price of housing. Because the more credit you make available to people to buy homes, who otherwise would not have money to buy homes, the more you increase the demand. The more you increase the demand, the more you increase the price. What you need are supply solutions. So how do we fix the supply problem? Well, one thing we could be doing is reducing the number of people here by deporting immigrants. Immigrants take up a lot of housing, especially low-income housing or starter homes that young people would involve themselves with. So one solution would be the mass deportations that Trump promised us. If we had 30 million, 50 million, even possibly less people in the United States, we'd have way more empty houses, and we would have the price of the houses go down. We're now at the point in many places. I live in Florida where there's lots of immigrants, and in many places these homes are bought up by 4 or 5 immigrant families living together. They all go in, they all get the house, and then they each like basically live in one of the rooms of the house. So you have several families all living on top of each other. So yeah, one illegal immigrant probably couldn't get the home, but 5 of them can afford it because they all pool their income and they just live on top of each other. That reduces the amount of houses that are available to the average person. You could also do things like stop investment companies in the United States from purchasing homes. It is very clear that corporations, investment firms are buying up large amounts of residential real estate and turning it into rental properties because they don't want people to buy homes. They want them to rent homes, which is functionally what you're doing anyway when you get a 50-year mortgage, because you're never going to own the home. You're just reducing the price. Now, don't get me wrong, you're still better off eventually having a descendant own the home than nothing. But we can solve this problem in many ways by freezing out these corporations and these investment firms from buying these homes. Or also, you can ban foreigners and foreign companies and foreign investment from buying land in the United States. Why can China own anything here? Why can a Chinese national or a Chinese corporation own one scrap of land? And they own a lot. Why are we letting them do that? Like, if China is like one of our greatest threats across the world, why are we letting them buy land, buy houses in the United States? Why are we letting their corporations buy these things? Run them out of here. So there are a lot of options. There are a lot of options that you can use to address this issue. And the worst possible one is a 50-year mortgage. Because all young people are hearing is, you're going to be in debt forever, don't bother. As a guy with a 30-year mortgage, let me tell you, it's already very annoying how long I'm going to be paying off my home. The idea that if there's another 20 years at the end of that, I would just die without ever owning my home is insane. And that's exactly what you're offering as a positive to young people. Like, they're not going to see this as a positive. Now, there's also another thing that Trump announced recently, which was the idea that he's going to issue a $2,000 stimulus check to middle and lower income people from the tariff money that he has accumulated. Now, don't get me wrong. In many ways, buying votes is a successful strategy. I've said this out loud, right? Like, buying votes in a democracy is the most effective strategy that you can select in a lot of ways. So there is some good politics about just sending people a check with your name on it before an election. So in that way, I get this. But at the same time, this does not solve the inflation problem. It only increases it, right? Like, one of the big reasons why people can't afford things right now is because inflation is too high. It continues to grow. Their money becomes less and less worth anything. So there's no point in saving. There's no point in keeping that money out of the system, because any money you don't spend is just going to drop in value. So you can play the game in the stock market to keep your money from losing its value, but otherwise there's no way to avoid this fact. And that's why housing and everything else keeps going up. Food, these like direct living costs are the first things to get hit by inflation: medical care, education, food, housing, right? If you send everyone a $2,000 check, you're going to create more inflation. You just are. Now, again, maybe that's what you got to do for the election. I again, like I said, as someone who's just said very plainly that buying votes is the most effective strategy, I'm not going to turn around here and hit Trump for theoretically buying votes. I do have to say, though, at some point we have to get off this insane train, right? Like, we can't keep living like this. This will destroy our country. This is terrible monetary policy over time. And you always want to stop it when the other guy's in power and not when you're in power, because you want to stay in power. You want the numbers to go up while you're in power, and you want the other guy to have to deal with the consequences, which is why democracy is stupid. Because it's always the next guy's problem. Trump is being a good Democrat politician here. In this case, I mean small d. A Democratic politician in the sense of he must be elected through the democratic process. He's being a good politician in this instance, but it will destroy our society. And the fact that we are looking at 50-year home loans really shows us how devastating inflation is on our society.